It's a lot of fun, number one. Number two, I got involved in this back in 2005 with podcasting. When I first heard about the concept of podcasting, and I thought, you mean I can record something and put it on the internet and no one can stop me? I was like, I am so there. And so I was excited about it and started finding online groups and was talking to my husband and my sister about it. And I couldn't find anybody locally. I mean, I had really great community online, but didn't know anybody, here in San Antonio that knew what I was talking about. I would go to different networking events because I'm a business owner, and I would talk about podcasting, and I'd be like, hey, have you heard about podcasting? Or if they had heard about it, well, are you doing any podcasting? And no one was. And so I kind of felt a little lonely with that. And my husband, God bless him, he was at the time was the head of the graphic design meetup group here in town, and said, why don't you create a meetup group? I bet you'll find some folks, that way. And so I was like, sure. So I created the San Antonio Podcasting Meetup Group, and that's kind of where it all kicked off. It was just really a search for other people who are passionate about podcasting, and from there we developed this really vibrant community where in 2007 we created the very first PodCamp, or any kind of unconference or user-generated conference event in San Antonio. Now, these types of events were happening all across the country and all across the state. They weren't happening here yet. So we created that in May of 2007, just this small group of podcasters, and that was really the beginning of really cultivating the community outside of just podcasting, and really getting involved with the traditional media and getting involved with business. We had corporations there. We had people from the print and people from the television who came to kind of see what was this all about. And so it was a really great way to kind of pool all of these different groups into one setting, and kind of, because it's a user-generated conference, which means the folks who attend the event actually create the event and the topics and speak, it was really a great way to kind of bring all those different elements in and have this dynamic type of event. And the community really started to cultivate from there. It was an amazing thing that happened, and yet at the same time it was a lot of effort, and it was still not a lot of people here really could understand what it was. So 2008 came around and we did it again. In the meantime, I was attending events in Austin and Houston and Dallas, and really getting to know the community that was already developed in those cities. And so I was learning a lot from them, and I would talk to them about what we were doing in San Antonio, and they would, a lot of times, this is what was surprising to me, a lot of times folks were like, really? There's a community in San Antonio? We never hear from anyone in San Antonio. We wondered what you all were doing. We thought that San Antonio was just like a no man's land because you never heard a peep from the folks down there. And yet we know very well that there is an extremely vibrant community here in San Antonio. It's just that we weren't out there spreading the message about, hey, this is what we're doing, and going to those events where other, early adopters in technology and social folks were having them. And so it was really kind of heartwarming to get out there and kind of really say, hey, we're here too, we're doing stuff just like you are. And so then what started happening is that now all of the folks in those communities started paying attention to what we were doing here. So when it came time to have PodCamp San Antonio #2, there was more folks who wanted to come in from Dallas, from Austin, from Houston, from Bryan, Texas, from the Rio Grande Valley. We started getting a lot more attention, and so we were not only developing our community locally, we were developing our community across the state, and having this really rich experience, because now I could go to Austin and I had lots of people that I could connect with. I could go to Dallas, and it was not just like a business environment, it was more of a community environment. And so that experience is very, very inspiring and motivating, and you want to have more and more of that, just because you can just feel the energy in the room anytime you would get together. So we were having these events, but they were annual events. In 2008, I went ahead and decided to have a startup weekend, because I went to a bar camp in San Marcos that Erica O'Grady put together. She's one of my mentors. That was another great thing, meeting strong women in all of these cities who are doing these amazing things. And I thought, well, I'm excited about this stuff. I have a good community here. I think our team, our group can do it. And so that was also kind of a secondary surprise for me, that I was meeting these amazing folks and they were doing these things that I had never even thought about. And the whole thing about the camp community is that if you like what someone in a community is doing, you can actually do it in your community. There's no proprietariness about it. It's very open concept. And so we decided to have a startup weekend in San Antonio, and it was just a wonderful experience. So this was more built around the startup community, creating a business from scratch in 3 days. So now you're bringing in folks, as vibrant of a community as we had in the podcasting and the technology world, all of a sudden you were bringing in people who were interested in starting business. So now you're adding another element completely, and you're developing that community, and it's all becoming this larger and larger and larger scale. And yet it's, if you actually took all the pieces, you know, you're looking at folks who are very geeky and very tech, folks who are very much into media, and then you're looking at folks who want to build companies. And normally we probably wouldn't hang out together. But because we were going, you know, gathering together around these camp type events, all of a sudden we're not only hanging around at networking events, now all of a sudden we're interacting online. And when we started having things like tweet ups, which is the newest thing that's coming around or that's happened, you know, now we're having all of this conversation from various segments. You know, you're not just saying, now we have healthcare tweet ups and we have business tweet ups and we have technology tweet ups and all kinds of things, but yet you're going to see a lot of cross pollination. And before, I might not have felt welcome at a healthcare tweet up or at a healthcare event, or I might not have felt like I belonged at a media event. But because we've gathered around these camp or conference events and we've connected there, now we feel welcome to go to any event, simply because it's not like it's a singular thing. It's just part of the community at large. So you asked